Have you ever watched a candle flickering in the wind? The flame bends, sways, but it doesn't go out. No matter how strong the breeze, it keeps burning. Now, imagine that flame is your mind. And life is the wind. Sometimes gentle, sometimes stormy, but always moving. Most people spend their lives trying to block the wind, avoiding difficulties, resisting change, wishing things were different. But the real secret isn't in fighting the wind. It's in learning how to let your flame keep burning no matter what. Maybe right now you're facing something heavy. A loss, a failure, uncertainty about the future. Maybe your thoughts won't stop racing, or you feel trapped in emotions you can't control. But what if I told you there's a way to train your mind, to make it stronger, more resilient, unshakable in the face of anything? Buddhism teaches that our suffering doesn't come from life's hardships themselves, but from how we respond to them. Pain is inevitable, but how much we suffer, that is something we have the power to transform. So how do we train the mind? It starts with understanding one simple truth: your thoughts shape your reality. Every time you tell yourself, "I can't handle this," your mind believes you. Every time you think, "This is too much for me," your brain strengthens that pathway. The more you repeat a thought, the more it becomes your reality. But here's the good news. Just like you can train a muscle, you can train your mind. You can rewire it. And once you do, your entire experience of life begins to change. Let's explore how. Have you ever felt like life was testing you, throwing challenge after challenge your way until you weren't sure if you had the strength to keep going? Some days, no matter how hard you try, everything seems to go wrong. Plans fall apart, relationships break down, dreams feel distant. You stand in front of the mirror, looking at your own tired reflection, and wonder, how much more can I take? But maybe the real question isn't whether you can keep going. Maybe the question is how you will keep going. There's an old Japanese story about a retired samurai who lived peacefully in the mountains. One day, a young warrior, eager to learn the secret of becoming invincible, traveled far to seek his wisdom. The old samurai greeted him with a warm smile and poured him a cup of tea. Just as the young man reached for the cup, the samurai suddenly splashed hot tea all over his robes. The young warrior jumped back, startled and angry. "Why did you do that?" he demanded. The samurai calmly replied, "You came here to learn how to be unshakable. Yet a small splash of tea was enough to throw you off balance. If something so small can control your emotions, how will you handle the real battles in life? The biggest battle we will ever fight is not against the world, but against our own minds." It's easy to believe that strength means avoiding pain, staying comfortable, keeping things under control. But life doesn't work that way. Pain is part of the deal. Loss, disappointment, failure, they all come, whether we like it or not. The real question is, when those moments arrive, will they break you or will they make you stronger? There's a story about a butterfly struggling to break free from its cocoon. Pushes and wriggles, fighting against the tight walls around it. A kind-hearted man sees its struggle and decides to help, carefully cutting the cocoon open to set the butterfly free. But once out, its wings are weak, unable to lift it off the ground. What the man didn't know was that the struggle was necessary. The effort of pushing through the cocoon was what strengthened the butterfly's wings, preparing it for flight. Without it, it was doomed to stay grounded forever. We often want life to be easier. We wish we didn't have to struggle so much. But what if the struggle is what makes us stronger? What if every challenge is shaping us in ways we can't yet see? A Buddhist monk once said, "When life knocks you down, remember, you are not a leaf drifting in the wind. You are the captain of your own ship." When hard times come, we always have a choice. We can let them make us bitter, angry, and hopeless, or we can use them as lessons, as fuel for growth. Think of a storm rolling through a dense forest. The wind howls, the rain pounds the earth, and some trees lose their branches. The storm doesn't ask for permission, it just comes. You can sit there, cursing the storm, feeling helpless, or you can learn from the trees that bend with the wind instead of breaking. Failure isn't the end, it's a chance to adjust. Loss doesn't mean emptiness, it's a reminder to cherish what remains. Pain isn't a punishment, it's a sign that you're alive, still growing, still learning. The mind is like water. When faced with an obstacle, water doesn't try to break through. It flows around it, adapts, finds another path. No matter how many rocks stand in its way, it keeps moving. If we train our minds to do the same, to be adaptable instead of rigid, we become unshakable. When something upsets you, don't react right away. Take a breath. Ask yourself, what am I really feeling? Is this reaction helping me? Or is it just a habit? Most of the time, we're not reacting to the actual situation. We're reacting to our own fears, our own insecurities. The pause gives you a chance to see things clearly. Some things in life are beyond your control. The past, what other people think of you, unexpected setbacks. You can waste all your energy fighting reality, or you can learn to accept it and focus on what you can control, your actions, your mindset, your response. There's an old saying, don't argue with the rain, just find shelter. Just like your body needs exercise to stay strong, your mind needs training too. Meditation, journaling, reading philosophy, or even just taking a few minutes in the morning to think about what you're grateful for. Small habits like these build mental strength over time. There's a saying that goes, you can't control the wind, but you can adjust your sails. Life will never be a straight, smooth road. Some days everything falls into place. Other days you get knocked down so hard you wonder if you'll ever stand up again. But the number of times you fall doesn't matter. What matters is the number of times you rise. Will you let life defeat you, or will you let every setback make you wiser, stronger, and more resilient? You don't have to figure it all out today. Just take one step, a small shift in perspective, a decision not to let negativity take over, a promise to yourself that no matter how hard things get, you won't give up. The question is, are you ready to train your mind to be unshakable? You know that feeling when something really ticks you off? Maybe someone cuts you off in traffic, or a coworker says something that rubs you the wrong way. Before you know it, your heart is racing, your mind is spinning, and you're already replaying the situation in your head 100 different ways, each one making you even more upset. And then, hours later, when the dust settles, you look back and think, did it really have to ruin my whole day? It happens to all of us. One moment of anger or stress can take over everything, dragging us around like a dog on a leash. And the worst part? Half the time, we don't even realize it's happening. But what if there was a way to step back? To hit pause before getting sucked into the emotional roller coaster? There's this little trick that helps. Instead of saying, I'm angry, try saying, I'm experiencing anger. Sounds like a small change, but it's a game changer. Because the second you say, I'm experiencing anger, you remind yourself that anger isn't you. It's just something passing through, like a visitor knocking on your door. You don't have to let it move in and take over your house. Buddhists talk about this a lot. They say emotions are like clouds. They come, they go, they change shape. But you're the sky. The clouds don't define you. They just pass by. Easier said than done, right? Because when you're in the middle of feeling something big, stress, sadness, frustration, it feels like the only thing that exists. The trick is catching it before it takes control. Next time you feel an emotion bubbling up, stop for just a second. Notice where it sits in your body. Is your jaw tight? Shoulders stiff? Hands clenched? Instead of reacting, take a deep breath and just watch it for a moment. Think to yourself, oh hey, anger is here. Interesting. Sounds silly, but it works. It's like stepping outside of yourself and watching things happen instead of being dragged into the mess. Another trick. Ask yourself, is this thought helping me or hurting me? If a thought is making you feel worse, why keep feeding it? You wouldn't keep drinking spoiled milk after the first sip. So why keep replaying a thought that just makes you more upset? It's not about pretending emotions don't exist. It's about making space so they don't run the show. And here's the thing, handling emotions isn't just about stepping back. It's also about training your mind to handle discomfort. Because let's be real, most of us don't like sitting with uncomfortable feelings. Ever tried sitting in silence with nothing to do? No phone, no distractions, just you and your thoughts? It's surprisingly hard. The mind starts jumping all over the place, looking for something, anything, to grab onto. That's because we're not used to just being. We're always looking for the next thing to do, the next thing to check, the next thing to distract us from whatever little discomfort we're feeling. But discomfort isn't the enemy. It's actually the thing that makes us stronger. Think about it like this. Imagine you're at the gym. If you lift the same tiny weight over and over, nothing changes. But when you push yourself, when your muscles struggle, that's when they grow. The same goes for your mind. There's an old story about a butterfly trying to get out of its cocoon. A man sees it struggling and decides to help, carefully cutting the cocoon open. The butterfly gets out easily, but something's wrong. Its wings are weak and it can't fly. What the man didn't realize was that the struggle was necessary. Pushing against the cocoon was what made its wings strong enough to work. Every time you avoid discomfort, whether it's a tough conversation, a difficult decision, or just sitting with an uncomfortable feeling, you're cutting your own cocoon open too soon. You're missing out on the chance to grow stronger. Life will always have moments that push you. Sitting in traffic when you're late, dealing with a rude person, facing uncertainty. You can't control those things, but you can control how you respond to them. So instead of getting frustrated, what if you saw those moments as training? A way to build your patience muscle. Next time you're stuck in a long line, instead of huffing and checking your phone, take a breath. Notice the feeling of frustration creeping in, and then do nothing. Just let it be there. Treat it like a little mental workout, or try something uncomfortable on purpose. Wake up 10 minutes earlier. Take a cold shower. Do something you've been avoiding, just to prove to yourself that you can handle discomfort and that it won't break you. Because the truth is, the more you practice sitting with discomfort, the less power it has over you. You start realizing that stress, frustration, and uncertainty don't have to control you. They're just passing clouds. And you're the sky. So what's one small way you can challenge yourself today? One tiny moment of discomfort you can sit with instead of running from? Because every time you do, you're building something unshakable inside you. Something that no frustration, no stress, no passing emotion can take away. There's something strange about the way our minds work. You could be having a perfectly good day, but then one negative thought sneaks in. Something small, like I always mess things up or I'll never be good enough. And before you know it, it's spiraled into a full-blown story about why you'll never succeed, why nothing ever works out, why you should probably just give up. It happens so quickly, so automatically, that we don't even notice it's happening. And yet, these small, repeated thoughts are shaping everything. Our actions, our confidence, even the way we see the world. Imagine walking through a grassy field. If you take the same path every day, over time, the grass gets trampled down and a clear trail forms. Your brain works the same way. The more you repeat a thought, whether it's positive or negative, the more it carves a path in your mind, making it easier and easier to think that way in the future. That's why it feels so hard to change. Not because you're stuck, but because your brain is simply used to following the same old paths. The good news? Just like you can form a new trail in the grass by walking a different route, you can rewire your mind by intentionally choosing better, more helpful thoughts. One way to do this is through affirmations. Now, I know affirmations can sometimes feel cheesy, but they're not about just saying nice things to yourself for no reason. They're about redirecting your brain toward thoughts that actually serve you. Think about it. If you've spent years telling yourself, I'm not good enough, do you really think one day of positive thinking will change that? Of course not. But if you make it a habit, if every morning you say, I am capable, I am learning, I am growing, then little by little that becomes the new path your mind takes. Another way to rewire your mind is visualization. Athletes do this all the time. Before a big game, they don't just train physically. They train mentally, picturing themselves performing flawlessly. The brain doesn't fully distinguish between what's real and what's vividly imagined. So when you picture yourself handling a challenge with confidence, your mind starts believing that's possible for you. And then there's mindfulness. Simply being aware of what thoughts are running through your mind at any given moment. Have you ever caught yourself in the middle of a negative spiral and thought, wait a minute, why am I even thinking this? That's mindfulness in action. The more you practice it, the faster you catch yourself, and the easier it becomes to shift gears before the negativity takes over. None of this happens overnight. Just like a new trail takes time to form, so does a new way of thinking. But with consistency, those old, limiting beliefs start fading, and in their place, a stronger, more resilient mindset takes root. But what about the things you can't change? The circumstances that don't just shift because you think differently? This is where something called radical acceptance comes in. There's a Buddhist teaching that says suffering doesn't come from pain itself, but from our resistance to it. We suffer not because life is unfair, but because we expect it to be different from what it is. Think about the last time you were really frustrated. Was it because of what happened, or because you wished it hadn't happened? There's a difference. Imagine you're caught in a storm. The rain is pouring, the wind is howling, and you're standing there, drenched and miserable, shouting, "This shouldn't be happening." Does that change anything? Does the storm care? No. All it does is make you more upset. But what if instead you simply acknowledged, okay, I'm in a storm right now. It's uncomfortable, but I can handle it? Suddenly, the suffering lessens. The rain is still there, but you're not fighting it anymore. Life works the same way. Some things are out of our control. Other people's actions, the past, unexpected hardships. But what is in our control is how we meet those moments. Do we resist reality, making things harder on ourselves? Or do we accept, adapt, and move forward? Acceptance doesn't mean giving up. It doesn't mean you stop trying to change what you can. It just means you stop wasting energy on things you can't control. It means recognizing this is the way things are right now and I can handle it. The moment you stop fighting reality, you free up all that energy for something better, something you can change. But what if you don't know what to do next? What if everything feels overwhelming and you're stuck in that awful place of not knowing where to start? That's when you use the next best move mindset. There's an old story about a man lost in the mountains. He has no map, no compass, no idea how to get home. If he tries to think about the entire journey ahead, it feels impossible. He panics, freezes, and gets nowhere. But then, he takes a deep breath and asks himself, what's the next best step I can take? Maybe it's finding shelter. Maybe it's following the river downstream. Maybe it's just walking for another 10 minutes to see where the path leads. He doesn't have to figure out the whole journey right now. He just has to take one step. Life is the same way. When we focus too much on the big picture, it's easy to feel stuck. But when we break things down into small, manageable steps, we start moving again. Maybe you're dealing with a difficult situation and you don't know how to fix it. Instead of obsessing over the whole thing, ask yourself, what's one small thing I can do right now? Maybe it's sending an email. Maybe it's making a phone call. Maybe it's just getting out of bed and drinking a glass of water. It doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be something. Perfection is what keeps people stuck. We think we need to have everything figured out before we can take action. But the truth is, most of the time, clarity comes from action. You don't wait to feel ready. You start moving, and the path reveals itself along the way. Even when you make mistakes, even when you don't know exactly where you're going, forward is still forward. So if you're feeling lost, if life feels too big, if the next step feels unclear, just focus on one thing. The next best move. Not the whole journey. Not the entire solution. Just one small step. Then another. Then another. And before you know it, you're no longer stuck. You're on your way. So the question is, what's the next best move you can make? Right now? If there's one thing life guarantees, it's uncertainty. There will be moments when everything feels overwhelming, when you don't know what to do next, when you wonder if you have the strength to keep going. But remember this, you don't need to have all the answers right now. You don't need to solve everything at once. You just need to take the next best step. A monk once said, if you want to cross a river, you don't stare at the water worrying about how deep it is. You step on the first stone, then the next, then the next. Your mind works the same way. Strength isn't built in an instant. It's built in small moments, choosing to breathe instead of reacting, choosing to shift your thoughts instead of spiraling, choosing to embrace discomfort instead of running from it. Over time, those choices add up. And before you know it, the mind that once felt fragile has become strong, steady, unshakable. So ask yourself, what is one small thing you can do today to train your mind? Maybe it's catching a negative thought before it takes over. Maybe it's sitting with discomfort instead of avoiding it. Maybe it's simply reminding yourself, I am stronger than I think. Whatever it is, start there. And trust that step by step, your mind is growing. If this message resonated with you, let me know in the comments. Which practice will you try first? And if you found value in this, help spread the wisdom. Like, share, and subscribe to Lotus Light Teachings so we can continue growing together. May your journey be filled with clarity, strength, and peace.